IPMNation.com.
Live from the Transitional Radio Uplink in Cuenca, Ecuador, you're listening to All Natural Being with guest host Henry G. Noel. What's the G stand for? Giddy up on IPMNation.com. Here's Henry.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 242nd episode of Brian Brody's All Natural Being, brought to you by Transitional Radio. Well, this evening we are broadcasting live on IPMNation.com, allnaturalbeing.com, and the new Brian Brody app with Fly on the Wall video on Facebook and YouTube, and rebroadcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and the usual cast of characters. We're broadcasting live this evening from our international uplink studio in Cuenca, Ecuador, and I want to thank our good friends at Wirecast for making it possible for us to broadcast globally. I also thank you, our trusted listeners, for without you, this would be a rather soul-searching moment, as I find it far more enjoyable having you participating in the thread and sharing your ideas. I appreciate those listening, all the shares that this broadcast gets, and all the likes and offered and for this show and our rebroadcasts. I want to thank you, the listening audience from all over the globe, the United States, Canada, Mexico, the UK and Ireland, our good friends right here in Ecuador, China, the Philippines, Brazil, India, Australia, Germany, Italy, France, Nigeria, Turkey, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Belgium, Sweden, Israel, South Africa, Egypt, Puerto Rico, Kenya, the Netherlands, Colombia, Peru, Greece, Poland, Cambodia, and New Zealand. And for those of you joining us from all over the globe, welcome. It's great to have you here with us. My name is Henry Noel, guest hosting for the out-of-commission Brian Brody, and I am thrilled to be filling in for our virtual hitchhiker. So, from our southern garden spot of the mortals, we want you to know your life is still your labyrinth, and you, regardless of what you believe, still get to call all the shots. So, why subjugate yourself to the whims of others? Were dealt this hand, and so why not just play it with gusto and all of the muster you can come up with, and play it the way you want to play it. No one should have more control over your life than you. So why succumb to the critics? And why allow the beliefs of others to derail you from your all-natural being? Don't get caught up in all the BS that others try to feed you. Use your primal scream to stand firm, proud, front and center. And don't place yourself on the back burner. That's why we're here. Well, not to place you on the back burner, but to be your friendly force, to place your heart's highest priority top of the list, reinstating the true wisdom and wallop of your inner whisper to terminate the turbulence in your life, garnish the guilt that you hold on to and just don't want to let it go, and streamline your sensibility so that you can face this crazy world head on, all to out-brutal a brutal. And so you can learn how to bring on your own bold, once and for all. Now, I'm trusting everyone has had a good day, and I want to thank you all for joining me this Monday evening. So before we dive into the thread, tonight's show will continue from where we left off last evening. We are going to continue discussing life enhancements, ways to improve our life. As a reminder, I chose this because Brian and I have always talking about being thin-skinned and having to thicken your skin, bringing on your own bold, unleashing your legacy, mortaling up, living life like you mean it. So what does all of that mean, and how do we do it? So as I've been mentioning, I would rather have a two-way discussion, talking with you rather than me sit here and a unidirectional talking at you. The reason is I learn more, much more from you when you participate. So I'll post the topic on Facebook in advance of the show so you can prepare for your participation. So let's get into the thread and let's say hello and see who all is here tonight. Let's see. Oh, crank it back. Hey, my brother Wayne. Hey, Guy. Lee, Raleigh, how are you this evening? Shane, Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see your icon pop up. Janelle, hi, good evening. Oh, wow. Dana, well, man, I was just talking about you earlier today. I'm glad that you're on. Thank you. Joseph, it's good to see you. Marcellus, rock and roll, dude. How you doing? Mary Haggerty, welcome. And I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you. Yeah, this is what we're going to be discussing. And I'm going to I'll go ahead and get in to do a recap of what we covered last night, and then we can continue from there if that's the way you'd like to go. So let's see how it goes. So what I want to cover are the ways to improve your life, and these are just the ideas and the ways that I'm thinking that we can actually have some tools to figure out how to work out the things that we're trying to do to change. What do we need to do to change, and how do we go about doing that? So the ways to improve your life. And so as a recap, as I mentioned from yesterday, and remember, jump into the thread if you have something that you want to add. It really does help. One of the greatest stresses now that we talk about today, or that we talked about yesterday, was dealing with difficult people, and what we should do to reduce the stresses that dealing with difficult people produce. Now, I mentioned stop reacting, arguing who is right. It's not important who is right. What's important is that we just reduce the stresses. So if we don't acknowledge it, then we don't give power to the people that are being very, very difficult to deal with. So, because it's not a reason to prove who's right or wrong. It's simply how to get through and reduce our stresses. To expand on that, we discussed reducing the exposure that we have to difficult people by simply not hanging around them. You cannot expect to see positive changes in your life if you're constantly surrounded by negativity and difficult people. So regardless of who they are, friends or family, I know it's difficult at times, but just lower the amount of time that you have to expose yourself to difficult people. That reduces the stress levels that you have and the number of stresses that we deal with. We also discussed the way we treat people we strongly disagree with. That's exactly as an example of what we've learned about love, compassion, and kindness. Life is too short to argue and fight. There are no points to prove and no issues to win. So differences of opinion mean there's an opportunity to learn. And knowledge, that's the wisest option we can have. We talked about when people are going through difficult times, stop being sympathetic, because sympathy focuses on and feeds the suffering. The person who's going through the suffering really is the one that has to deal with this. And like we said, we can plant the seed, well, they have to allow it to grow. So why continue to reinforce the suffering? It doesn't help anybody by being sympathetic. Be compassionate. You know why? Sympathy provides the attention someone needs to wallow in the suffering. Sympathy helps to justify the suffering and the reason for the suffering. Now, compassion, on the other hand, provides the means to end the suffering. Compassion provides a means to change the suffering to understanding, and then from understanding into acceptance. And with acceptance, the suffering goes away. And I use the example that Jesus didn't sympathize with the hunger, the suffering of others by giving them a fish. He was compassionate about their hunger, their suffering, and taught them how to fish. And the suffering is gone. We also talked about it's okay to be upset. Being upset defines your boundaries and establishes what you will or will not accept. However, it's never okay to be cruel. Reacting with rage and resentment and jealousy will never change the hearts of others for the better. It only changes yours for the worse. Then we were talking about, actually, I think this is the biggest one. Stop being the victim. Whatever has been done that resulted in you believing you became the victim is not worth holding on to. Forgive others, not because they deserve to be forgiven, but by holding on to the resentment, you are forever chained to these people as victims. If you are ever going to be free from the victimization you feel, you must learn to forgive. Understand it, remember it, Never place yourself in a position of falling victim again. You can never be free to find your true happiness until you remove the shrouds of the feeling of being victimized. Forgiveness frees you from the chains and the burdens of being an eternal victim. Forgiveness isn't going to change the person who victimizes. The sole purpose of forgiveness is to change you. Then we discussed staying positive when you are surrounded with negativity. That positive or negative perceptions, what one person sees as negative, another sees as positive. Falling victim to someone's negativity or suffering is the same as providing sympathy instead of compassion. Find a reason within the negative perceptions that to smile. Just simply smile. When you do this, it sends the message that you are in control and not the perception. It's a simple way to effect a change in you and the world around you. So I'll just check. I want to check into the thread here just for a bit, and we'll move on from that and get into the newest section of it. So we'll go ahead and we'll continue. And what I want to continue with is gossip and drama. Now, there's a saying that says that gossip and drama end at a wise person's ear. So be wise. Don't be a participant in the gossip and drama. Seek to understand why the gossip and drama are occurring and where or who is benefiting from it. Then walk away before you feel forced to participate. When it comes to gossip and drama, there is always someone trying to benefit. And it is always at the expense of someone else. Once you can understand this, it becomes easier to not get involved and begin judging. And so that what I really wanted to say about that was that we all fall into it, and we've all been involved with gossip and with the drama. And we've all experienced what it's like. We've been on both the offensive end, we've been on the receiving end of it. It doesn't work, and it just creates more stresses in our life. And again, all the purpose of all of this is the last couple of nights is to reduce the amount of stresses, to give you a little bit more control over your life, over yourself, and not have to deal so deeply with all of the stuff we have to deal with, and put it under control. Marcellus, let's see. You have to forgive yourself. Absolutely right. You have to forgive you have to forgive for yourself. That you're the one that's going to benefit from it. And thank you, Candace. I agree. Yes, I'm glad you do agree with Marcellus, because he's absolutely right. He says, I've learned no matter, I got to move the screen over just a little bit. No matter what you do, some people you will never please. And that's absolutely, no question about that. And that's their issue. It's like people, when we disagree, when we have a disagreement, we are on opposite sides of the coin. And that's part of trying to reduce the arguing back and forth in the very first one. Our job is not to sit there and prove us right, which actually is proving them wrong. Our job is to enjoy our life and not have all the stress. Shane, the only one you can please is yourself. Yep, absolutely. It's the only control you have all the time. Absolutely. And the way we deal with people, the way how we deal with people, that's what we have control over. Heather says, so those whom you gossip with will gossip about you. Yeah, and that is a sad fact. And I think that's what we do. We're into this as a process. And if we talk about somebody, you know darn well we're going to be talked about behind our back. But it's the same thing as if we're involved with people that like to gossip. Somewheres it comes around that you were there, and then that's the question that we just don't need to have answers. I mean, why place ourselves in a position that's going to create stress for ourselves? That's what this whole point is about. Candace, I've heard gossip about me, and I laugh it off. Absolutely. Most of it is not true at all. And that's true. I mean, again, we don't. we can't take it to heart. And that, you know what's going to go on. We just don't need to participate in it. John, good evening, John. How are you? I hope you are doing well. Thank you, John. And so that's where that's how we're going to go try to finish up and go through this just to see what it's all about. Another thing is always set an example. Always be the example. Set the example. Establish the criteria within which you wish to live. So if you can always set the example and treat people with kindness and treat them with respect, even those that may be rude to you, and not because they are nice or respectful, but because you are. Do your best to be thankful for those who are rude and difficult, because they serve as a great reminder for us on how not to be. It's one thing to say the right thing, and it's quite a bit different to be doing the right thing, walking the talk. Then no one can question your intentions. You know, we let me jump back in here. Yeah, I think we've all been in this situations like that too, Heather. That's one of the things that I love about this, is because we all have lived this and we've all dealt with it. We've all suffered the ramifications of it all. We've all participated in it, and we never really put a finger on what causes our life to be so complicated or so frustrating. And a large part of it is what I'm trying to get us to just stop doing. Shane, I always love when people talk about me. So flattered that they have nothing better to do than to talk about little old me. I love it. Thanks, Shane. Lee, I feel that if you gossip about someone, you are giving up your time. Absolutely, your time, your attention, and the energy to them. So they own you. That's it. You know, that's part of this whole thing about trying to, when we get into a conflict with somebody, over a disagreement over our views or our beliefs, that's all we do when we react to what they're saying. We give power to their words. We give power to their belief. And we strip ourselves of the power, and we end up being controlled by them. We do it so automatically. We don't even realize what it is that we're actually doing. And that's the first thing that happens. We give up control. We give up the power, and they have the control. And now they push our buttons. And that's one of the terms that we use all the time for it. Wow, that person just knows how to push my buttons. Why? Why? Why do we allow them to push our buttons? Just don't react. Simply don't react. Candace, Shane, when they gossip about me, I just giving someone else a break. My dad used to say that too. I really don't care what they say. Well, see, some of it can be held humorous. Yes, it can be. I was about ready to gossip about Shane. Thank you, bro. That's beautiful. I love it. Well, go ahead. I think that'll work. The next thing I wanted to go ahead and cover is, have you thought about how guilt affects your lives? I mean, we all regret stuff from the past. Let's face it. We've all done something. We've all said something. We've all argued. We all have regrets that has caused us to feel guilt. And have putting it in perspective as to how important it is to not have the guilt, to live your life so you don't have it. I gave an example because guilt is obviously all from the past. It's stuff that we have done or stuff that we have said. And I mentioned yesterday that walking a path, when you lay down your path, if you see the path in front of you, it's probably not yours. You need to step off that path and start creating your own. But in the process of walking your path, and you lay down your foot and create your next step, when you lift up your back foot, there's nothing there. We don't leave a trace. And so we shouldn't be falling into the guilt trap, because it really does nothing except destroys us. So, we've like I said, we've all argued, we've all had arguments that destroyed a friendship or a family relationship, a death of a friend or a loved one. We've all suffered or dealt with the decision to hurt somebody rather than have yourself hurt, the choice to lie or steal or cheat rather than be honest. These are the things we've all done. If you were to look at each of those issues that causes you guilt as an anchor, and we throw that anchor out behind us, can you see how taking that next step and dragging these anchors, how that restricts us from attempting to live and to walk towards tomorrow? There's nothing we can do about the past. Reliving it over and over and over only keeps us tied to it. Now, could we have made better choices in the past? Man, you bet your life we could have. But we didn't. And there's nothing we can do about that. Now, anyway, what we can do is learn from the past and not repeat it and live our lives honestly and for the betterment of others rather than in spite of others. And I think, and I'll throw grieving in there because grieving is a guilt, is the same thing as a guilt. It's simply another variation of what guilt is. Guilt and grieving walk really close, very hand in hand. And if there's nothing that you could have done about a situation and no way of preventing the issue you are grieving about, then it's time to stop beating yourself up for something outside your control. Just like the decisions we made that ends up as guilt, the decisions resulting in our grieving were made, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's done. Learn from them, cut the ropes that drag those bloody anchors and slow us down in our advancement towards tomorrow. Let's go back and see Candace. We all make mistakes every day. No perfect person exists, but apparently people think they are. Oh man, absolutely true. And I think that that's a large part of the issue. And that's that old, he who is without sin cast the first stone type of thing. Nobody is innocent of all of this. We've all done it. We all have had the guilt. We've all grieved. We all do this, but we have to get over that if we're going to continue to go through. Otherwise, we might as well turn around backwards and try to pull those anchors. It just doesn't work. So we have to do that. Marcella says, but the regrets are what we have lived and learned by. That's true. It really is. And that's what we have to do, is that we take it. But if we allow those regrets and the guilt, the grieving to control our life and keep us from living, that is what this whole thing is about. How do you bring on your own bold if you wrapped yourself up in all of the blankets of grief and regrets and guilt? How do you find your happiness again if you're so wrapped up in guilt and grieving? All of the stuff that we're talking about here keeps us from doing exactly what Brian and I have been saying to do. Bring on your own bold, mortal up, do thicken the skin. This is what it's all about that we're trying to get you to do. And like I said, by trying to go through this one by one, I'm just trying to give you some tools and some things to really take a look at as to how to go about doing this. So Joseph says, oh, hello, David. How are you, sir? Welcome. Speak as if, let me get this right. Speak as if it lasts forever. You can't take back one spoken. Absolutely right, Joseph. Once you open your mouth, it's out. So it may as well be either nothing that comes out or positive, and not something that is destructive. And I think that fits in with the trying to stop reacting, because we open our mouth and we've just given all of that control to the other person by arguing. So that's absolutely true. Marcel, is true. That's how I've learned. Definitely, absolutely, definitely. We learn that every day. We go through this. Shane says, it's society that has defined perfect and excellence. And people have fallen into that and made themselves depressed. Only you can define what your experience, what your excellence and perfect is for you. Absolutely right, Shane. It isn't about it's not what society says. And that's a large part of what the whole opening to the show is stop listening to what other people say. Stop trying to fit into a mold that someone else created. If it's your mold, it's your life, it's your mortaling up, it's your wanting to live your life with gusto. It's not theirs. They are just setting us up for failure. And that is exactly how that works. John, hi. Thank you for jumping in on the thread. There's no way possible for a negative attitude to give you a positive life. Absolutely right. There's no way. You are going, if you don't change it inside yourself and eliminate the negatives, the positives become harder and harder to find. And that is absolutely true. Grow your own thick skin and define your own life. Yes, Shane, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And this is, again, we're going through some of the processes on how we can actually do that. So we make better sense of what it's all about. Marla says, better to be presumed ignorant than to open your mouth and remove all doubt, from Abraham Lincoln. Yes, I love that quote, actually. I think it's a great quote because it is absolutely true. We do enough damage to ourselves. We don't need to be adding fuel to the fire. So thank you. I love that one. If you really want to be happy, okay, we'll go on to another one. If you really want to be happy and peaceful, then stop being afraid of being yourself and stop thinking about what others think about you. Just right along the line of what was just said. All you accomplish is wrapping yourself up in another layer of unhappiness, and you bury your own happiness deeper and deeper inside of yourselves. Identify what is making you unhappy. Discard each of those layers. There's nothing selfish about giving yourself enough space for self-care. So strip it away, get rid of that unhappiness. Most of it's not yours anyway. You just adopted it, and experience life on your terms. I mean, you'll be life-giving to others if you can do that. And so that's a large part of what I want to cover, to give you an idea of what to do and how to about going at. Some examples from you guys. I would love to see some examples as to what you've had to do to change so that you could bring on your own bolt, so that you could actually stand up and say, wait a minute, no, you know what? It doesn't even deserve a response from me. I'm not even going to do that. So I know you've got many, because like I said, we've all lived this. This is nothing new. It's all about us. It's all about us improving ourselves, making the changes that have to be in order for us to survive in this crazy world, and not succumb and be part of the problem. To do what we can so that we can be part of the solution. And I think that is more important than anything that we could possibly do in order to try to improve ourselves. Just stop being part of the problem. When we deal with the guilt, when we deal with the sympathy, when we deal with the arguing back and forth and not holding our tongue, we deal with the criticisms, we deal with the prejudices, we deal with all of these things, we are the problem. And by stopping all of that, we become the solution. And that's all I want to see everybody become, the solution. And as you change and you alter the way we react and the way we live our lives and the mashugana that is out there by society and by government and religious institutions and everything else, we start to live our life for us. And that's what this whole show is about, is living the life you want. It may not be the one you have at the moment, but it most likely is because of a lot of the stuff we just covered. But we have to learn to live the life that we want, that strips away and takes the ego into consideration and sets it aside, and we make our own decisions for ourselves. Everything that is going on, the decisions that we've been making, have all been laid out for us. So that's really what is happening. Let's see. Yep. Joseph says, have to be careful not to covet others' lives. Yes, absolutely right. John says, the solution is you. Love it. It is. It absolutely is. Candace says, breaking away from the controlling people was my first step. Exact. See, and I'd love to hear more about that too, because most people don't even realize that they're so wrapped up in other people. So I would love to hear some of that in that you recognized it. You actually understood the fact that you're so wrapped up, or were wrapped up with the negative people, that you change your life. Absolutely changes. Mary says, yes. What about people who decide that what they need to be is happy? What they need to be happy is what someone else has. I think if we rely solely on what's inside ourselves, that is risky, because it would tend to be selfishness. Actually, Mary, I think I do understand exactly where you're coming from with that. And, understand that all we can do is deal with ourselves. I mean, if, somebody's idea of being happy is actually taking from other people. For example, let's say you're in a relationship, and it's a relationship of incomplete people. One of you or both of you are incomplete. You're not happy. And you come together because the other will complete you, which I always love that phrase. You complete me. It is impossible. If you're not complete, then you don't bring completeness, and therefore you have nothing to share. If you show up incomplete, then all you can do is take and take and take, and you're never satisfied, because you'll never be. It's got to be from inside you. The happiness that I refer to, that's inside of us, is the happiness we had when we were an infant, as we were a child. We were happy. We didn't know what it was to be sad. We had no clue what that was. We got hurt. That it didn't affect our happiness. Kids, fall, scratch their arms, their leg. They're up. They brush it off. They cry, and off they play, within just a few seconds. So the kids are naturally happy. This is what it is, because they don't know what's sad and miserable. They don't have all of these anchors that they have to drag behind them. They just live their life right in the now, and they are thrilled and they're happy. And the problem that we have is that we have that happiness. It's still in there. It's never gone away. We just covered it up with a whole bunch of unhappiness. And so we don't recognize it. So the happiness is in there, and it's not being selfish to work on ourselves, to strip away all of the negativity and all of the unhappiness, to bring out our bold, to bring up our happiness and live that happiness again. I figure we've earned it. We've spent a lifetime burying it. We may as well start dragging it out, dust it off, and start living it again, and start having the happiness again. To me, it just simply is a way to do this. We have to keep the ego in check. Absolutely, Marcellus, because that is our biggest enemy. We just do it to ourselves. We listen to that other voice. That other voice has its things that it wants to do, and we end up living a life that it laid out for us. And part of this idea, comparing us as adults and then looking at us as children, kids live in the moment. I mean, they absolutely have their grasp about the moment. They're not worried about what happened yesterday. They're just up and they're happy. They're certainly not thinking about tomorrow, which is why you got to keep them from running out in the street. But they're just inherently happy. And why is it that because we're an adult, we can't do that? Why can't we be happy? Why is it so selfish and so wrong for us to be happy? Donna, hi. A new name comes up. I like that. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Glad to have you here. Yes, you have been complete before you can truly love. Absolutely right. Everything else beyond that, anything less than complete. And we wonder why there's so many dysfunctional relationships. And it comes from being incomplete. It comes from not being happy. It comes from not being content. We do this all the time. We get involved. I can help them, or I'm not. You complete me. It never works. It just never works. And let's see. Candace says, "I think of myself as whole and not half." There you go. I would have to agree with you, Candace. I think you are whole. Mary Haggerty, you sound like Ayn Rand. Oh, Ayn Rand. I agree with most of her philosophy, but not all. And that's understandable, Mary. I mean, again, we all have different backgrounds. We all have different belief systems. We have all different ways that we have been raised. And that that is why I love having this type of a format, because I get to read what you're about. Not just you have to hear what I'm about, because what I'm about doesn't really matter. What it is getting you to understand how important you are and what we have to do to get you to see your importance, your own bold. And that's really what the whole goal is. The whole thing on dealing with completeness and happiness. If we focused, if we acted, if we did it this way, if we were controlled, we were absolutely in control of our lives as far as our happiness, and we didn't let people get us upset. We didn't watch the news and make ourselves mad. We didn't sit here and identify ourselves by titles that you're some religion or that you are some political affiliation. The problem is this is what we do. We are hamstringing ourselves, or chop blocking, I guess, as Marcellus would say. Every time we do that, every time we let fear step in, or hatred or discrimination step in, where we lose the ability to communicate with another person, regardless of their viewpoints, we lose, because we lose knowledge. And to me, the difference between wisdom and foolishness, wisdom is having knowledge and using it. Foolishness is either not having the knowledge, not accepting the knowledge, or getting the knowledge and not using it. And to me, that's what separates the fools from the wise. And we only do that by being in situations sometimes that are not part of the people that think the same way that we do. Because if you're within the group of the people that are like-minded, that's a safety zone. That is really comfortable. It's there, and you don't have any of the issues, and everything works out well. But it's when you step out of that group and you step into the group that is the opposite side of what you're doing, that's when we learn. That's when they actually could learn, but they've chosen not to, and they've chosen to talk. And when you talk, you can't listen. And when you can't listen, you can't learn. So by taking it, by not reacting, we get to understand a little bit more about why they think the way they do, and we avoid the arguments and actually have a chance to communicate. I love using it's saying that it's so simple. But I'm telling you what, it's years of me going through all of this, until I could get a handle on what it is to actually be complete, to actually know when you're complete, to know when you're happy, when you've stripped enough of your garbage away to expose that happiness. And then it becomes real genuine. I mean, otherwise, what do we do to be happy? We go out. We find it outside. We go looking outside to the external in order to find our happiness. We find someone that we can talk to. We go out to dinners. We buy stuff like cars and houses and things and clothes that make us feel happy. That ain't happy. That's not happy at all. The happiness is what we had. And ultimately, when we go out and do all that stuff, we just cover ourselves with more guilt and regret, unhappiness, and it just keeps on getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And like I said, those anchors get heavy. I think Brian always used to laugh about my referral of it to a gunny sack. In the military, that's what it is. You throw everything you own is in a gunny sack and you take it with you. And that's where I really love that term. And it's just lighten the load, stop adding more to the gunny sack and lighten the load. Let the stuff out. I mean, we've picked up so much stuff that we don't need, but we've identified with it because of upbringing. The way our parents were raised, the way their parents were raised, and it goes back ad nauseum. And the way what we've been taught, what we've been taught by our parents, our teachers, our political people, our religious leaders. All of this goes into who we are. And then, so yes, we can have differences of opinion. I mean, we certainly can. And, you brought it up where most of her philosophy, that you agree with most of the philosophy, Mary, but not all. And you're entitled to not agree with it all because that was her life. This is what she's saying the stuff that makes sense to her based on her upbringing, just as I'm saying the stuff based on my upbringing or from the changes of those from the upbringing. Let's see. To avoid arguments, you lose your voice. Yep. And we forget who we are. Very well done. Wow. I like that. Very well put, Donna. Thank you. That is perfect. That's perfect. Wow. Well, I'm going to start. I've got about 2 more minutes here. I'm going to shut this down about 45 into the hour. And I just, first of all, thank you again for participating on the thread. I love it. I think this is fabulous. And this is the format that I really enjoy. Again, the participation to me is extremely important because, and I'm being selfish about this, I want to learn. I want to understand you all. I want to understand what makes you tick. What is it, the things that you like and dislike? And so instead of me preaching to you one-sidedly, having the two-way, to me is far better and far more productive than me just sitting up here and just spewing out stuff that you have no way of either accepting or rejecting as you wish. So I want to thank you for this evening. I really do. Tomorrow we will get into a different topic. And then on Wednesday, I'm looking forward to Lee will be back. Lee Raleigh will be back. If you're still in the thread, Lee, I'm really looking forward to it. I think what we're going to try to do is set it up for a half an hour on your segment, and we'll go from there. And but I'll talk to you about that off air. But I'm looking forward to having Lee come back and do another riff of his, because he's just a fun guy to have around. So tomorrow we'll get into a different subject, but again, other ways in looking at life, trying to tie in all of these loose ends, all of the things that we have that affect us in our life. And all I'm trying to do is put a spotlight on them so that we understand. It's one thing to say, it's all ego. Well, it's not all ego. It's a lot of other stuff that's out there that does affect us. And that's what I want to cover and give you a lot more tools in order to be able to have a better life and to be happier in this life rather than living with the guilt, the regret, and all of that other stuff. So anyway, I'm going to bid you good evening, and I look for the post. I will be posting tomorrow morning what tomorrow night we'll be covering. So this way you can get yourself prepared. I appreciate it. And again, thank you all for the participation. I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.
IPMNation.com.